Someone asked how I hold a coffee cup, which is a good question. And my response is, without a doubt, pinky out. Because I can't actually move my pinky in. That's a bad joke. I started my role as a volunteer at Children's. And on my very first day, I was asked to take several families to the CCBD, the Center for Cancer and Blood Disorders. And the first time I was asked to escort a family to the CCBD, the person that was asking me to journey with this family then asked if I knew where I was going. It's an understandable question, right? It's my first day. And the woman who was training me quickly replied, "Oh yeah, she knows where she's going. She's quite familiar with the place." You know, every time I would walk a family to the CCBD, I got to share with them that I was a patient in the Center for Cancer and Blood Disorders for around 10 years of my life. And I would get to share with parents that looked a bit frazzled because they weren't sure where they were going, and you know, the hospital is such a big place. I'd get to share with them that I spent most of my life at Children's. I grew up there, and my mom and I hardly ever knew where we were going. And even when we would finally think we had it figured out and we knew where we were going, they'd move the clinic. Or they'd open a new tower, a new wing. And so you're essentially going to the same place, the same floor, but maybe you now had to take a different elevator there. So we were always a bit frazzled too. We were right there with them. And it seemed to always comfort the family to hear that they weren't alone in their frazzledness. They weren't alone in their frustration. They weren't alone in their anxiety. They weren't alone in the difficulty. But I'd been there too. And I was right there with them in the moment. And they wouldn't have to walk it alone. And I would drop the patient and family off at the destination, and as I would walk back to my station, I would just think to myself, this is so surreal. I never dreamed that some of the most painful experiences of my life, experiences that all took place in this building, I never dreamed that those experiences would somehow be repurposed into something that is productive and useful and helpful and comforting. I never dreamed that these experiences could be repurposed and repackaged and utilized in such a productive way. And I'm so thrilled to announce that it's not just in my role as a volunteer that I get to see some of these painful experiences undergo a repurposing, but I'll get to see it in my studies. A while back, I started asking questions about the intersection of theological ethics and medical ethics. And to be quite honest with you, some of the questions that I find myself asking about theological and medical ethics are they're questions that I've been asking my entire life. And somehow, by the grace and goodness and kindness of God, those questions are being repurposed, and I will get to earn a PhD in religious ethics, studying the intersection of theology and medical ethics. And I will get to ask one of the questions I've been asking my entire life and turn it into a dissertation. And I will get to do that right here in Dallas, Texas, the very place where I started asking the questions that I'm still asking today. The questions that will work their way into my dissertation. And at the end of it all, perhaps you'll get to call me Dr. Johnson Edwards, or maybe just Dr. Edwards. Dr. J.E. I don't know. I'll think about it. I have a few years. To figure it out. But the reason I am telling you this news in association with also talking about my volunteer role at Children's is because I wouldn't be asking the questions that I'm asking, and I wouldn't be doing a PhD in religious ethics if it hadn't been for my life at Children's. My life as a complex, chronic, long-term patient not only prepared me for what I study now and what I will study in the years to come. But it also led me there. In the last few years of my life, years where I've watched my health deteriorate, years where everything has just fallen apart again and again and again, and I've wondered, is there anything ahead? Because all I see is darkness. Is there anything ahead? These years led me to this place where I get to take the questions that I've been asking in the darkness and I get to bring them into the light and do something positive and helpful and hopeful with them. I get to repurpose the darkness. And I think sometimes that's the most redemptive and healing thing we can do, is not to ignore the darkness. It's not to pretend that it's not there. But to believe that maybe by the grace of God we can do something with it. Maybe by the grace of God it will be repurposed and we can do something helpful and hopeful. That we can bring the darkness into the light. My prayer for myself and my prayer for you is that as we continue to navigate our own darkness, and let me assure you that I have some dark days ahead. My medical life is a bit of a train wreck right now. We'll talk about that later, but my prayer is that even in the darkness, I can remember that I am seeing past darkness repurposed. So perhaps there is hope. That this darkness can be repurposed too. Perhaps there is hope.